Hello, David. Welcome. How are you doing?
Doing fine. Yourself?
Pretty good, thank you. So, ready to learn more about the abundance approach and how this can redefine the success for high achievers.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm
Yeah,
happy to share. I'm honored to be on your podcast. Thank you for the invitation.
awesome. So, probably what we can get started with is to know a bit more of that background, professionally, personally, how you got to this point on supporting others, and then to creating this framework that our conversation will be focused on this approach you got together and how you're supporting others like high achievers, people that might feel that burnout, the empty success cycle. Obviously, you can let us know more about it. You're the expert, so I'll pass it over to you.
Oh, well, thank you. So, my story is really about identity transformation, and we're taught that identity is like personality, that it's fixed, and we can feel like this identity that we've created for ourselves or that's been kind of pushed upon us is just who we are and what we are. But identity actually flows from values and from subconscious programming. And did you know that those can be changed? I mean, that was the big insight for me, and I'm clinically trained. But a lot of the focus in my field is on what we would call cognitive or conscious therapies. So things that you're aware of and that you're thinking about, but there's so much more under the surface. And life is it's a constant journey, I think, of evolving identities, at least for those who are successful in navigating it. Um, for me, I've always felt like I had something to prove. I grew up in a broken home and lived in government housing and things like that. And during that time, when I was young, I experienced some trauma that resulted in me kind of spiraling into the wrong crowds, drugs and alcohol, and mental health disorders. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and the substances were a way to cope. And it was, I won't say it was a rock bottom experience, but it was pretty low. And it was at that point that I met Jesus, and He changed my life. And that was really the first redefinition of my identity, and honestly, the most profound. It was at that point that I decided that I wanted to help people that struggled with things that I'd struggled with, and that led to me, going to school for psychology. It was my initial interest, and I ended up getting a degree in clinical psychology and began. My first job was working at a rehab, which is was really cool because you get everything in rehab, like not only addiction, but like there's co-occurring mental health disorders, there's family issues, there's all of that. And but I still, had something to prove. I wanted more impact, and I went on and achieved dual state licenses to practice. So a license in behavioral health treatment, license in clinical addiction treatment, and national board certification. And so in the mental health field, I just worked my way up through the ranks. I became an intensive outpatient coordinator and started overseeing treatment programs in a multiple county catchment area that agency had. My second big identity shift came when I became an executive. So I started working for a company that had multiple residential centers. And while I was there, we built all kinds of level of cares across the state. So intensive outpatient programs, medication assisted treatment, partial hospitalization. And it was at that point that I really had to become not just a healer, but a leader. But that only took me so far. I kept pushing toward bigger goals, thinking, the next one would finally make me feel fulfilled. But it didn't. And there was a point where I got extremely burnt out. And so just being an administrator, I used to joke that I'm counseling the counselors, which is really what I was doing. I didn't have time to see a lot of clients. And it was successful. I was successful in that role, and it was rewarding to see greater impact, to see the lives that we were helping. But on the inside, there was just something that was off. I tried self-help, time management tricks, taking breaks, vacation, all the usual stuff. But that feeling always returned. And so I ended up leaving the executive world, joined a private practice that I'm still with now. And along with that, the kind of the skills that I'd built in that journey, I started my own coaching and consulting business, and that's where King came from. Now, I do several things with King, but the primary things are, number one, I provide consulting to companies that are wanting to, particularly in the healthcare field, that are wanting to like launch a new treatment center or launch an agency, or to expand their service array, the things that they provide to their clients, and helping them to navigate the labyrinth of regulations and accreditation and all of that stuff. But the other thing King does, and the thing that I'm most passionate about, is broadly speaking, you can say performance enhancement. So just to give someone a frame of reference of what I do, I'm a performance enhancement coach, but not really, because what I do is on a much deeper level, pulling in psychological and neurological principles to bring about deep change. And it was, even after I'd started that business, I created a change model called Accelerated Neuro Conversion. And we could talk about that a little more in a minute, but that was exciting and that was helpful. I mean, a lot of people were really able to change their life through that. And though my impact was, greater than ever before, and I had all the external trappings of success, I secretly felt drained. I was unmotivated. I even felt guilty for not enjoying the success that I worked so hard for. And I wondered if I just needed to be tougher, to push harder, have more discipline. But again, deep down, I knew that something was off. And so that was frustrating, because I had all the clinical knowledge to succeed and to be happy, but I felt unfulfilled. So it was an uncomfortable space to be in. But it was there that I realized, I was trapped in what I call the empty success cycle. And it's the more that I achieved, the less that I enjoyed it, and the harder that I worked, the deeper into the pit I fell. And I was living the life of an overworked achiever. So externally I was successful, but internally I felt something was missing. And no matter how many external things I tried to fix it, which is what people usually do, and a lot of my clients have been there, done that. So setting a bigger goal, doing a productivity hack or a self-help program, but nothing really works or gives a lasting sense of that fulfillment. So in my mind, I was like, okay, what I need to do is to become a fulfilled visionary, but I didn't know how. And so this kind of took me back to school without formally going back to school. I dove deep. I studied cutting edge neurology, energy psychology, which is something that strangely clinicians aren't taught much about, but it's powerful, and spiritual holistic practices. And I recognized that I was trying to force a future that no longer fit the person that I'd evolved into. And to break free of the cycle, I had to shift my identity, right, from this overworked achiever to a visionary who was deeply fulfilled. And that meant I couldn't focus on symptoms anymore. I had to solve the root cause. And to do that, I built what I call the abundant approach. And it's, a scientific, it's an evidence-based system. And what it does is it allows people to shift their identity to align with their purpose at each stage of life. And it does this by literally rewiring their neural circuitry and their subconscious operating system, and then automating those changes. That's where the ANC comes in, so that they can effortlessly sustain them. And it changed my life. It was a doorway to deeper peace, to joy, and to fulfillment, not just from a professional perspective, but really in every area of life. And since then, I've worked with so many clients that felt what they needed was that next big breakthrough or performance hack or something like that, or more discipline. And really, it's not better strategies or creative ideas, working harder, that makes the difference. In fact, a lot of the clients I've worked with, their subconscious identity, it's so hardwired, that belief, that they pursued it even though it meant sacrificing their own health or their relationships or their well-being. That's kind of the definition of the overworked achiever. So I love meeting those clients and working with them. They're good people, they're hard workers, they're compassionate, they're very often self-sacrificing, but they know something's missing. They know they can be more and they can have more abundance in their life. And so one of my greatest joys is being able to help them to recognize that true success isn't just about achieving more. It's about aligning who you are with what truly energizes and fulfills you. And when they're able to do that, they break this empty success cycle permanently. And so that's kind of where I am now, and where my focus is.
And it totally makes sense thinking about from a personal perspective. I found that you can always set up higher goals professionally, I mean, and then there's something missing. As you mentioned, there should be a connection that ties in for every and each one of us individually, right? There's lots of components that work within the space and create what we are. So we're
Hmm.
not only like a business, a professional that is doing A, B, or C. As you mentioned, it makes lots of sense having this framework and integrating the various things that come into play as an individual and make you be who you are, but also having that sense of being complete, fulfilled. If you do it in silo in one area of your life, it can be also like maybe I have a great social network or circle, but there's something else missing. So I feel it does resonate and makes lots of sense to me. If you want, we can deep dive a bit more in what's the framework, what are these three pillars,
Hmm.
and feel free to let us know how it works.
Well, just to speak to the point that you just made, yeah, that's a big part of. So when I created Accelerated Neuro Conversion, which is that's a mouthful, but basically it's just kind of a proprietary system of enhanced behavior modification, right? So it's harnessing these scripts. So you can think of it this way: when we are young, we have to learn how to do something. And well, this is true throughout life, but I'll give an example when we're young, like learning to tie your shoes. You really have to figure out how do I do the loops and how do I, the rabbit goes down the hole and all that. But or learning to drive a car. I use this example a lot. We're focused on the road, keeping it between the lines. What's my speed, and I've got to watch my mirrors. And but after a while, we're drinking coffee, adjusting the radio, driving, and it's all automatic. And that's what the brain does. It automates these behaviors. And the reason it does that is because if we had to use that amount of concentrated, focused energy to learn something new, we would never be able to pick up new skills and new things. So when we learn something, the brain automates it and files it away as a program. Now, that's great, and that helps us to be able to move forward to learn new things. But the brain doesn't discriminate, right? So the brain doesn't say, okay, you're going to school and you're bettering yourself, or you're using assertiveness skills. Let's automate that. But getting drunk after work because you're so stressed and yelling at your wife, that's bad. We're not going to automate that. The brain says if you do it enough times, I'll automate it, and that's what it does. So we have all of these collections of automated behaviors, and part of that is well, all of it really is very neurological. And so they're scripts that we play out automatically. Now, accelerated neural conversion is a way to intentionally shift those scripts and to harness that automation for our benefit instead of automatically self-sabotaging ourselves, because we often don't even realize that we're doing it. And when you mention different areas of our life, that's one of the reasons that people fail. Why I think ANC has been helpful is because we try to change one area without changing everything connected to it. So there are areas in our brain that are connected neurologically to other areas. So let's say that I decide that I want to be healthier, so I'm going to stop eating fast food. I'm not going to go to McDonald's anymore, as an example. And so when I try to do that, that's dealing with one area, that's dealing with, maybe the behavior of going into the store, but there's other things connected. Maybe McDonald's is the place where I meet up with my friends and like we talk about our day and we connect, right? So there's this social neurological pathway and system that's connected to it. And maybe when I go eat McDonald's, it's like a reward. It's my comfort food. It's, I've had a hard day. This is what makes me feel good. So there's an existential pathway and system connected to that. And when we don't address all of them, you've got multiple systems that are unchanged, fighting against one thing you've tried to change. And that's why the habit change doesn't work. So I call it a neural target. We pick the behavior and then we connect all the associated pathways and then shift that together. Now, that's great in terms of behavior modification. And the system, this comes out of education, it comes out of the military, it comes out of, numerous, the business world. The systems are the same, so the system for training an employee, training a dog, training a soldier are the same. But if you harness those deep neurological principles, then you have an automated path to success. And the cool thing about that is when we automate something, it doesn't require effort. So it's not like you're gritting your teeth trying not to do something. You literally outgrow it. And then the abundance approach took that concept to the next level because so many of our things are beyond our awareness. And without, you can think of the subconscious as an iceberg, and all our conscious thoughts are just that tip sticking up. But there's so much under the surface that often we're not even aware of and don't know how to access. So there are specific ways that we can access a theta brainwave state, for example. It's the same type of state that when someone is in hypnosis or in deep meditation, there are neuro-repetitive tasks that can be done. There's anchoring techniques, different things that allow you to access and hit the record button, so that you're not just replaying scripts, you're writing new ones. And that's really what the abundance approach is about. And yeah, we can get into the details of that, but that's the essence of it, which is what I find exciting, because for me it unlocked the whole, I've been practicing for over a decade, and there were things that you can be successful cognitively, but man, it's like if you open a door in your house and realize there's a whole nother wing over here, and it's pretty cool.
Okay, thank you. And then one question that came to mind is, let's say in my career, the point that I'm at right now, I've achieved lots of great things. I have grown professionally. I've gone from, let's say, the maybe the bottom line, and now I've scaled into a senior level or role. Is that the approach that it will go? Like, first, what is my end goal or what I've been looking for, and then go down into the other, let's say, components of what is it in my maybe personal, familiar life that I'm missing, that it's not there, that it's creating this sense of emptiness. Is that how it work? Kind of the approach?
Well, I think the reasons behind it are as unique as any person might bring. And so I want to be cautious not to oversimplify things, but we carry with us, I call it neurological programming. Some people call it subconscious scripts. There are these things that we've been taught. Like, here's an example. So the first roughly 7 years of life, we have different brainwave states, right? So right now we're in beta, right? So that's where we're thinking, we're talking, we're observing the external world. If we were sitting on a beach, watching the waves and being relaxed, we'd be more of an alpha state. We're awake, but we're calm. And then a deeper level is that theta level, and then you hit delta, and you're asleep. Well, these different brainwave states, first 7 years of life, you're primarily in theta, which is the recording. And that's because you're learning. That's why kids are sponges. They absorb everything. And once you hit a certain point, the brain says, okay, now we're going to hit play. Now, there are ways to do new recordings, and some of that is like driving, and it takes repetition, a lot of repetition in the correct way. But let's say someone during childhood was told something like, well, I have a client, for example, right now. She's successful. She's attractive. She is highly skilled in a lot of areas. But in terms of her relationships, the thing that she desires most, you're kind of a wreck. And that's true not just in, she runs into friction professionally, but also romantically. And she's a smart woman. She knows how to get on Chat GPT and research how to have a good relationship. But there's a disconnect between knowledge, that conscious piece, and what we deeply believe. And one of the things that, because of her upbringing, a script that was kind of implanted in her, was that she doesn't deserve to be happy. And that's something that's basically out of her conscious awareness, but it also governs all of her actions. So when she gets close to that point of happiness, even outside of her awareness, she'll do something to wreck it. And a big part of the abundance approach is helping people to identify those things. We have to become aware of something before we can change it, and then giving them the tools to rewrite that program. And when you rewrite that program to, I deserve happiness and contentment and fulfillment and joy, well, then you begin to see the world in a different way, and that opens up new possibilities, and your actions change, and you actually attract those things. So a lot of it isn't I mean, there are a lot of performance coaches or therapists that, teach techniques on how to white knuckle it and how to grit your teeth and just don't do that thing. My approach is really about outgrowing it. And once you outgrow it, it falls away. You're a different person. So it's really about identity.
Thank you. That helps a lot to understand it and to see how things work. And this rewiring totally rings a bell because, as you mentioned, sometimes the previous experiences you've had, maybe during your early stages, childhood,
Mhm.
something bad might have happened. And then you have the fear of, okay, what if I keep, I don't know, going down this path, let's say on a friendship, not even relationship, but in the past, maybe friends were not the people you thought they were, and you keep doing something or just closing yourself to others because of that experience. So I get it on this rewiring on how sometimes we just do things not purposefully but unconsciously. So as a
Mhm.
shield too,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and so childhood is just one example, but we do this throughout our life. We're constantly picking up scripts, and some of them aren't the things that we want to pick up. For example, um, I went through a period where I was, meeting a lot of people and networking and all of that, and I had I was forgetting people's names. I would meet someone, and almost immediately after they introduced themselves, I'd be like, "What was their name?" And so I started telling myself I'm just bad with names. And I told other people that I'm terrible with names. And so I'm speaking this, and the brain is recording it. And it's going, okay, well, here's the program. We're terrible with names. And for a long time, I just kind of lived with that handicap. But then I got to thinking, well, we know that, I mean, and there's lots of scientific research. This isn't just positive thinking. You can actually change your genetic expression through your beliefs and through your intention. And by changing some of these subconscious scripts and patterns. So I began telling myself I am good with names, and I intentionally rewrote that script, and now I can remember names. I mean, not perfect, but it's a lot better because I had put a blinder on, I had put a handicap on that didn't need to be there, and I didn't even realize that I'd done it. I thought that I was making a logical conclusion, but it wasn't that at all. I was actually shaping the way I perceive and respond to my world. So it's about that at that deeper level.
Thank you. Thank you for elaborating more on how it impacts, and sometimes that unconscious way of operating could
Mhm.
be from different points within our lifetime.
Well, it's my pleasure,
So
Susan. Just
thank you,
kidding.
David. So regarding going back into the framework, you have there's like these three. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like these three pillars or
Mhm.
structure in place, and you have wholeness, fitness, and impact. Is that correct?
Yes, those are the three. So the program has three pillars, and within each pillar, there's three phases. And so it starts with wholeness, because really it's kind of like, you can pick all the oranges off a tree and say, okay, now it's good if you don't like oranges, but they're going to grow back. Or you can lay the axe to the root of the tree, and then you have no more oranges because otherwise they'll just grow back. So it starts with kind of going deep in terms of how you see the world, how you see yourself. And those deeper, some of those can come from childhood or just, through experiences that we've had in life. You go through a horrible divorce, that's going to imprint some things on you. And time heals all wound, but it doesn't correct all faulty programming. And that's something that we have to work toward. So the first pillar really dives into those elements, right? So higher purpose is one of the phases. Transcendence is another phase, and managing time. And so there's a spiritual element of this, but it's also very scientific, right? So it depends on how you want to approach it. I'm a big believer in a holistic approach. So when we just treat one area, we're missing so much. We are creatures that are biological, psychological, social, and spiritual, and all of those elements matter. Now, spiritual relates to our values, our identity, and it can include faith, but that's an important piece. And so this kind of speaks to that, but it's not just, I'm a Christian, but it also, I have a Buddhist perspective, Judaism perspective, secular perspectives. And the purpose of this, and in every phase of the program, there are education modules. And the education modules, I think of these as kind of like tilling the ground. You have to break up the ground before you can plant something. And so the modules challenge you. They challenge your beliefs. They cause you to think about things, to be exposed to different things. And not everything in the program is something that I endorse. but it's something that makes people step back and go, I haven't thought about that before, or this is a new perspective. And once you begin to kind of tug at that thread, it opens up new possibilities. And so that phase deals with higher purpose, with meaning, with transcendence, and with managing time. And then the second phase, fitness, which I call, success blueprint rewiring, deals with managing temptation. Are you going to stop at Dunkin' Donuts every morning, or are you going to make a change? Are you going to go to the gym, or are you not? And it deals with multidimensional health, so looking at not only mental health but physical health, and then education and training. How are you going to build? I believe that we should be lifelong learners. There's always more to learn, more to discover. We're always developing ourselves, and that does several things. One, it gives us something we can give back, to others, but also it sharpens us. It causes us to evolve. And then the third pillar is impact, right? So that's kind of bringing it all together, and how can we use this to bring about a change, not only in our life, but in the lives of others. And so that deals with family, that deals with friends, and it deals with your career. So in a nutshell, that's the program.
Okay, sounds easy, but I know there's lots of complexity just looking at, like, there's a nice graph you have in your website, so it's really interesting to see how it all comes together, and with this holistic
Mhm.
approach, how the changes can be made in a wholesome, now like I don't know if 360, but 180 uh,
Mhm.
perspective. So that's really interesting that you have come with this framework, that it has some scientific based research and components to it, which also makes sense to see, okay, this is interesting to learn more about, to probably help the audience relate to, and find what is it probably in their end that might be in need for look more in depth, to help adjust and rewire their brains and how they're doing things. So
Yeah.
that's really good. And out of curiosity, is there something within the practice you're offering that involves any type of digital elements, like, I don't know, personalized things, plans, technology in place, or within your roadmap? How do you find this will evolve through time,
Mhm.
if anything?
Yeah, so one of the important pieces of this, and maybe this comes from my clinical training, is, well, and then from a business perspective too, metrics are important, right? Because if not, then it's just objective. And one of the things that I think is makes people very reluctant to engage programs like this is because anyone can hang out a shingle and say, I'm a whatever expert, and there's no vetting of that. Um, there's no real evidence of that. And so people have been burned by, promises of the moon, and nothing happens. So I'm a big believer in evidence-based practices. Not only do I have the education and the experience, but state licenses and guidelines. And so from my clinical training is the importance of having metrics. The program also includes those. So you're able to, for example, there's like some pre and post exams that you can take tests that'll tell you, you can see the growth and the change. The education piece, like I said, it's just the beginning. It's just breaking up the ground. That leads into specific exercises, writing exercises, and there's also neurological activities that stimulate change in the brain that will help to bring about change, not only to give insight to things that might be subconscious and causing problems, but also how to shift those. In every phase of the program, there's something I call a top gear identity shift. And these are specific techniques that help people to rewrite that faulty programming and actually write the programming that they want. They can choose that programming, whether that's to be more outgoing and social, or whether to be, have more self-control financially. It's unlimited. But these include energy psychology techniques, things like holographic repatterning, harnessing alpha and theta brainwave states. We talked about that a little bit. High emotional or high intensity emotional imprinting, and then acute intentionality, visualization, reprogramming, purpose-oriented repetition. There's lots of different things that they can do, and I explain in each of those. There's a guide, and I work with clients as well, so to help them to explore and to help them to apply. And throughout that process, we're measuring, we're making sure that we're seeing the results that we want to see.
Great. And getting back to that point, I feel like data nowadays is power. So having these measurements in place, how to gauge how things progress or things they're achieving makes total sense and will create a difference from a customer experience for sure.
Mhm.
So thank you. Thanks for providing those insights. I do see, like from your website, we're going to be sharing below all the information. So anyone who's interested can follow you, learn more, and keep track of what you've been doing. But also, I saw you have testimonials in place within your website, which helps a lot to support
Mhm.
all the things you've been sharing to us, letting us know how everyone that has worked with you has had great experiences and obviously an outcome from that, which is the end goal. So
Mhm.
that's really good to hear, to know, and to have it available around.
Mhm. Well, and on that, so this probably comes from being a counselor as well. I'm very careful to protect my client's identity. So unless it's like a video recording, some people are fine with that. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. So you'll see that on the site. But yeah, there's a lot of people that have, I think, been able to have some breakthroughs. And I know that word's thrown around. It's like the word transformation, but that's really what it is. It's stepping into a new way of being, evolving into the person that is able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, because it's never what you have to do to achieve something. It's always who you have to be to achieve it. And if you can become that person, you're actually going to attract that reality into your life. And so that's the most important piece. So, and there are lots of psychological techniques from a neurological side of things. I mean, there's a lot that goes on too. We have in the subconscious programming, it's a limiter of potential, and so we have part of our brain called the DMN. It's the default mode network, and it basically is this rigid self-concept. And if we can deactivate that or override that, then it creates this window of neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to rewire and to shift. And there are different ways that we can accomplish that. And then another one is the RMNs, the reality monitoring network, and that's really it's a limiter of capability of reality. It's the way that you see the world, and that along with there's what's called the RAS, so the reticular activating system. It actually filters information based upon your beliefs and your perspective. So, as an example, have you ever, let's say, bought a new car? And so now you're driving this car, and as you're driving around, you notice that car everywhere you go. All right. So what's
Yes.
happening there is your filters changed. So now there's something that's important to you, something that has become relevant, and your brain is actively filtering for it. Or another example is a woman to get pregnant, and she'll notice all the pregnant women. Well, there's nothing in the water. It's not like everybody's getting pregnant. The brain is
Hmm.
noticing different things. So what that means is your RAF is that system that might just be filtering opportunities out of your life, filtering possibilities out, and maybe even filtering negative things you don't want in. And so that can also be deactivated and shifted. And so it's about changing who you are. So which is one of the reasons why it's so exciting, because it's kind of like stepping through a doorway into a new reality. Um, that's the way it's been described. And my clients feel, you can see it, they feel lighter, they feel energized, and they're excited about what they do. So it's not just about their work, it's about, like I said, every area of their life. One thing that I will caution people on, though, is this is not something that is quick and easy. This is deep work, and there are times that it can be painful. But if someone really wants to change who they are and change their possibilities for their future, this does it.
Thanks. Thanks for all those insights. And I was gonna mention the pregnant scenario or case. I've gone through that and lived that and totally resonate with it, or even with thinking of a car or something specifically. When you think about it and you're on that um, mindset, you start like seeing it everywhere.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yes, totally rings a bell. And maybe one other case or situation that I think might be relatable to what you just mentioned
Mhm.
is when, like, I remember when I was a kid, like, mention which one is your like preferred animal, how do you think others see you, and really how others see you, right? So there's like these different things that we believe than how we're seen and then how others think. So it's good to put in together all those perspectives and help for us to gain a different idea of who we are, how we show to the world, because sometimes we might even like fall short on our beliefs. We might feel we're not good enough or we don't have
Hmm.
the skill set to perform in any of our focus in life. And you might hear from others or learn that, oh, they think you are amazing and doing A, B, or C. So
Hmm.
important to think of all those cases too.
Yeah. Well, to kind of connect the neurological and subconscious piece of this to the psychological, there's a principle in psychology called self-fulfilling prophecy, and basically it works like this. So let's say you get up in the morning and you stub your toe on your bed, and you say, "Today's going to be a terrible day." Well, now your system activates, right? And it's filtering for all the confirmation. And so you spill coffee on your shirt. See, it's a terrible day. And you get stuck in traffic. Oh, it's a terrible day. Now you get to work and you're a jerk to your coworkers and they're a jerk back to you. You say, oh, this place sucks. It's a terrible day, right? And that's because your brain is filtering and looking for all those things. But you could also shift that. And if you were to say, today's going to be a great day. Well, you spill coffee on your shirt. You go, oh, that stinks. But hey, I got a lot of other nice shirts. You get stuck in traffic. You could go, oh, this is terrible traffic, or be like, man, I'm glad I got a car. I've got some air conditioning pumping. I'm good. You get to work, right? You're going to be in a better mood. People are going to respond to you better. And you might say, this is a really nice place to work. I'm thankful for this job. And so we shape our reality. We see what we want to see. The problem is only about 5% of our day is conscious. Those automated scripts are running. I mean, think about it. You get up in the morning, you do your same routine. You get in the shower, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, you drive to your work using the same route, you go into the building the same way, you talk to the same people, you do the same tasks that you've done 1,000 times, you go home, you drive back using the same route, you watch some Netflix or whatever and have some dinner and you go to bed and then you do it all over again. Everything's automated. And that script will continue playing, whereas 95% of what you do is just those automatic subconscious things. The only time the script is broken is when something new happens, right? So if you've ever been driving somewhere and it's like you just tune out, like you get there and you're like, I don't remember how I got here. You were completely on autopilot. But let's say you're driving and maybe you're on autopilot and then there's a wreck up ahead. Well, all of a sudden that program shuts off. This is new, right? We don't know what to do in this situation and we need you to be aware, right? So the brain turns you back on and now you're conscious and now you can make decisions. I need to go this way. I need to brake. I need to whatever. And that's what the program's about, bringing you into consciousness so you can actually create your life instead of being a victim of whatever subconscious programming you put on yourself or someone else did or society did. You get to be the pilot.
Yeah, I love that. To take the driver's seat. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, thanks, David, for sharing all the insights on what your program is all about, the approach, the lenses you come with, and all the supporting information and like science background you share, and obviously opening up on your personal story. That's great. All the like the evolution you've had throughout the years and how you're here supporting others to become the best version of themselves.
absolutely. It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thanks again and talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.